Hello, all you freedom-loving people. Welcome to another episode of Front Page. I'm your host, Scott Cameron Goulet. Ukraine's application for EU membership, which was handed in amid the invasion, has not been met with enthusiasm by EU countries, even though the president of the EU Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, agreed Ukraine should be made a member candidate. Russia has not slowed its attack, regardless of the unsuccessful start of the invasion, and after adjusting its tactics, Russian troops have been parachuted into Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv. Has Putin also decided to start bombing residential areas? Many are asking, will we see a return of the Soviet bloc? How do we stop Putin from marching through Europe, grabbing what he wants? How can we put an end to this strife and return the world to peace? Okay, let's get into it. On February 28th, the day after the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, said that she supported Ukraine joining the EU, Ukraine formally submitted its application for accession. Ukrainian President Zelensky requested a special procedure for immediate accession to the EU. However, this request was rejected. The 27 EU member states are clearly divided on the issue of Ukraine's accession. While 8 countries expressed support for Ukraine, Germany and France said they are unlikely to do so soon. EU officials say one of the reasons for rejecting Ukraine's request is the lengthy process of applying for EU membership. Acquiring EU membership is a lengthy process that requires several years of in-depth reforms to meet EU standards. These reforms usually need to be accompanied by economic and financial changes to show that a country is sound enough to compete in the EU, and it must eventually adopt the euro. This result is not surprising. On February 27th, Politico published an article stating that despite the EU president's support, the decision for a new country to join the EU requires the consent of all member states. EU countries do not always support the Commission's views and sometimes block accession negotiations due to bilateral conflicts with candidate countries. Charles Michel, president of the European Council, also acknowledged this. He told reporters that there have been long-standing differences among EU countries on enlargement, and that there are different views and sensitivities within the EU on enlargement of member states. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell said it could take many years for any country to complete the membership process. The presidents of 8 Eastern European countries support Ukraine's request for membership, including Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Slovakia, and Slovenia. They signed an open letter on February 28th calling on EU member states to immediately grant Ukraine EU candidate status and to open membership negotiations, but other countries have not been so encouraging. The EU started with 6 member states and has undergone 4 waves of expansion over the past 3 decades. The last country to join the EU was Croatia, which was admitted in 2013 after nearly a decade of negotiations and reforms. After the UK's withdrawal in 2020, the member states total 27. There are currently 5 EU candidate countries: Turkey, Serbia, North Macedonia, Montenegro, and Albania, but their applications have been in limbo for years. In the first round of ceasefire talks between Ukraine and Russia, the Ukrainian side demanded the withdrawal of all Russian troops, including from the Donbass region and Crimea, which has been occupied since 2014, while Russia's demands were not reported. But in a February 28th call between Macron and Russian President Vladimir Putin, the Kremlin said the truce would only stop if 3 conditions were met. Macron demanded an immediate ceasefire from Russia and also called on Putin to stop all attacks on civilians and to secure civilian infrastructure and the main roads, especially south of Kiev. Putin is willing to commit to the 3 points proposed by Macron, but the demilitarization of Ukraine and the recognition of Russian sovereignty over the Crimean Peninsula by the West are the prerequisites for ending the invasion. But both sides knew that none of this was entirely acceptable, and everyone was leaving enough room for bargaining later. The publication The Australian reported that a French military source said that the Russians might next increase the intensity of their airstrikes and may adopt other indiscriminate strikes. And then on March 1st, it was reported that Russia said it was changing its tactics and would start shelling residential areas. And several other sources have further revealed that a second wave of Russian attacks following a change in strategy would be imminent and that it would be a truly massive operation. Early reports on March 2nd said that Russian forces have entered the city of Kherson and have surrounded the city of Mariupol, which are both key Russian targets in the south of the country. And as of that night, Kherson had fallen into Russian hands as Russian troops had forced their way into the city council building. CNN quoted two sources who are familiar with the matter, saying, in a classified briefing on February 28th, U.S. officials warned lawmakers that a second group of Russian troops would consolidate their position in Ukraine and would dissolve the Ukrainian resistance purely on the basis of numerical superiority. Supporters of this prediction argue that Russia did not send its main force during the first few days of the battle. The soldiers of these armies were confused teenagers, poorly equipped and undersupplied. It is likely that they were sent in to test Ukraine's strength. These supporters also believe the statement that Putin predicts the destruction of Ukraine in 4 days, and the minutes of the Russian meeting circulating in the media were Russian propaganda. This propaganda was perhaps to scare Ukraine or was to make the West think that Putin is not thinking straight. But Putin was head of the KGB, the Soviet secret police. He cannot be unaware of how to take security measures, how to keep things secret, nor is he naive of the real situation. On March 1st, the Russian Defense Ministry was urging Kiev residents to flee the city. The ministry threatened it would strike areas used by Ukrainian security services and communications. Later, a Russian missile hit a television tower in Kiev, killing at least 5 people and injuring 5 others. Russia has also fired rockets at Kharkiv, which is Ukraine's second largest city. According to the State Security Service of Ukraine, Russian airborne forces had invaded Kharkiv in the early hours of March 2nd after the previous day's bombardment, and they are currently engaged in heavy fighting with Ukrainian defenders. The senior advisor of the Taiwan Institute for National Policy predicts that the war will probably end with Ukraine deciding to demilitarize or neutralize, not to join NATO or the Russian Federation bloc, because the West does not provide the protection that Ukraine needs. Before we go on with the experts' comments of the who and why of the sanctions, I'd like to mention another major event happening soon that is as important as the Ukrainian war for America. South Korea is holding a presidential election next week, and we have a video discussing the importance of it on our membership site. I want to show you the trailer. There are only 2 major events on mainstream media's radar right now, the crisis in Ukraine and the midterm elections, but in fact, beyond the Canadian truckers' petition and the Durham report that we have been covering, there's another important event coming very soon. For the United States, it is more significant than the Ukraine crisis. To outsiders, the South Korean election is just one of many regime transitions. But in the eyes of Washington, Beijing, and Tokyo, this election is crucial in determining the geopolitical landscape in the context of the U.S.-China confrontation. We'll go into more details on our membership episode at frontpageshow.com. I hope to see you there. Okay, let's get back into it. NATO did not send troops to Ukraine. The West responded only by sanctions against Russia. Putin expected this. He laid this all out in advance so that the sanctions were not as effective as they could have been. The U.S. has long made clear its attitude toward a possible Russian invasion of Ukraine. That is, it will impose economic sanctions on Russia, but will not intervene directly. Putin's countermeasure is to ally with the Chinese Communist Party. On February 4th, Xi Jinping and Putin met. at the opening of the Beijing Winter Olympics when they signed 15 cooperation documents, including purchase and sale agreements for Russian oil, gas, wheat, and other commodities. The Russian side revealed that Xi proposed a new goal of reaching $250 billion in bilateral trade. With the promise of full economic assistance from the CCP, Putin was relieved of any worries about waging war. On February 24th, when Russia launched the attack on Ukraine, the CCP announced it would allow the import of wheat throughout Russia's territory. Previously, the CCP had allowed Russian wheat from only 7 regions because of contamination problems, while Russia was unanimously condemned by the international community and was sanctioned by Europe and the United States. The CCP said China and Russia will continue trade cooperation. This is a huge loophole in the sanctions process. Therefore, the sanctions will most definitely be less effective. Swiss newspaper Neue Zürcher Zeitung also published an article on February 26 saying that Putin could not easily start a war without China's covert support. So the West's sanctions should not only target Russia. German newspaper Handelsblatt also published a commentary saying that the CCP's secret support of Putin is giving Russia more strategic maneuvering room. The White House has placed its hopes on stopping the war on the CCP. The New York Times quoted U.S. officials as saying that if there is any world leader who can make Putin think twice about invading Ukraine, it is Xi Jinping. U.S. officials also revealed that senior Chinese and U.S. officials have held 6 emergency meetings in the last 3 months. The U.S. said that Russia was amassing troops near Ukraine and had implored the CCP to dissuade the Russians from invading, but CCP officials rebuffed the requests each time, claiming they did not believe an invasion was in the works. This was like trying to get blood from a stone. Next, I want to take a moment to read and respond to some of our viewers' comments. The first comment is from one of our recent episodes discussing why sanctions could not stop Putin. I put the link in the description. 546 Cowboy wrote, sanctions never stopped Germany in 1939, Japan in 1941, North Korea in 1950, or China and Russia today. Thanks for your comment, Cowboy. Trump's sanctions on Nord Stream 2 should never have been removed by Biden. Today we need sanctions that hit Putin where he lives, in his pocketbook. Tony Luciano commented, President Trump is a true American patriot, and the words he speaks are the true American way of life. Life, liberty, and freedom. Thank you, Tony. I could listen to Trump for hours. I think many of our viewers strongly believe in standing up for our rights to life, liberty, and happiness. This is what makes us freedom-loving people. Michelle B. wrote, just came back from supporting the Freedom Convoy in Arizona. Freedom-loving people from all over the U.S. and Canada were there. I love my country, freedom, and patriots everywhere. Way to go, Michelle. It has been so inspiring seeing more and more people standing up against ever-increasing government overreach and outright tyranny against our human rights and God-given rights. So many of us now share the sentiment that we're not going to take it anymore. Okay, this is our show for today. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please don't forget to like and subscribe this video and share it with your friends and family, because everybody deserves to know the truth. Again, thank you for watching Front Page, and we will see you next time.